This is just a quick lesson on our new section 2.4. I'm going to post this because I have a substitute on Friday. So that way if you're stuck on the homework, you can take a look at this when you get home. And we're using a lot of the same concepts as we have the last 2 days. As you can see, the left-hand side of the equations look a lot like the simplifies from the last 2 days. But now we have an equation, so we're going to do a solve. So we're going to combine the last 2 weeks into one big problem. So this is how we would approach this. Our whole goal is to solve for the variable n in problem 1. But before we do that, we're going to combine like terms. So as you may remember, I like to use color and identify the like terms with the operation in front of each term. So when I look at this problem on the left-hand side, I see 5n plus 3n, so I write that as 8n, and then I bring down the plus 6. Now, the new part is we're going to bring down the equals, set it equal to 22, and go ahead and go back to last week. This is something you guys were really good at, solving a 2-step equation. We're going to do the opposite operation because now we're trying to identify what n is. We're going to move everything away from n. We'll start with subtracting 6 from both sides. These cancel. We're left with 8n on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, we're left with 22 take away 6, which is 16. Divide each side by 8. Cancel out the 8s. And you're left with n is equal to 2. Tonight on your homework, I want you to check 4 answers. So to check 4 homework answers, at least. So to check this problem, I'm going to go to the original problem and say 5 times n, which is 2, add it to 6, and then 3 times n, which is 2. We're going to see if this adds up to 22. So 5 times 2 is 10, plus 6, plus 3 times 2. So this is 6. So we have 10 plus 6 plus 6, which is 16, plus 6, and that's 22. So that matches this, so it checks. That's the first example. The second example involves the distributive property. So remember we talked about different ways to solve the distributive property. Let's practice solving problems with the distributive property. Let's practice multiplying through 3x, and then we have a 3 times a negative 4, so that ends up being subtract 12 equals 15. That brings us to a 2-step problem. So we're going to identify the variable and isolate it. In order to do that, we have to do the opposite operation. To move the 12 over, we have to add. Since it's subtract 12, we're going to add 12 to both sides. Then on the left-hand side, this cancels. So we have 3x is equal to 27. So remember, we want to isolate x. Okay, somebody just came in, so I'm not sure where I left off. So we're going to isolate x, and we're going to do that by dividing both sides by 3. So x is equal to 9. To check this problem, we're going to plug in 9 for x. So we have 9 take away 4. And we want to work parentheses first now. So now we have 3 times 5. That's 15. And that's the same as the beginning. So we know it works. Okay. Remember, you can always pause if this is going a little too fast. Since I'm doing this without any students in the room, I usually go a little faster. Let's look at the next 2 examples. Okay. The third example, probably the biggest difference is we have variables on both sides. So this one's a little bit harder. So the goal is to combine the like terms by getting the variables to one side. Then I'll do an example and show you how we do that. Okay, what I usually do is if I see a subtract, like right here, and I have h's on both sides, I usually like to add the opposite. It's a little bit easier for me. So I'm going to add 5h to both sides. So these are opposites, so they cancel. So on the left-hand side, I have a -1. And then on the right-hand side, I have a 7 plus an 8h. Now we're back to the 2-step problem, where I'm going to isolate h. So in order to do that, I have to do the opposite operation. Remember, this is a positive 7, so I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides. This cancels out, so I have 8h equals -8. I'm solving for h, so I divide both sides by 8, and then I get h equals -1. Let's do a check. Go to the original problem, it's 7 plus 3h, so that's 3 times -1. Now we're going to plug it into both sides and see if both sides are equal. So we have 7 plus -3, and the question is that equal to -1 plus, -5 times -1 is positive 5. So this is 4, and this is 4, so it checks. Last example, then you'll have some assignment problems on page 81 to go with. Okay, this is similar, that we have variables on the same variable on both sides. Remember that plain m is the same as 1m, so I'm going to add 1m to this side and add 1m to this side. So this cancels, and I get 8 equals 16 plus 4m. So my job is to isolate m, which means I need to move the 16. So remember, this is a positive 16, so I'm going to subtract 16 from both sides. These cancel, so on the right-hand side I have 4m, and on the left-hand side I have -8. And remember that I'm trying to isolate my variable m, so I'm going to divide both sides by 4. 4's cancel. Over here I have just m, and I have -2. So I'm going to check my answer, go up a little higher. Make some space for that check. I'm actually going to do that on this side. So 8 take away -2 we're wondering if that is equal to 16 plus 3 times -2. So when you look at 8 take away -2, that's the same as 8 plus 2, which is 10. Let's see if it's equal to 16 plus a -6, which is also 10, so it checks. The other thing to remind you about is that in the book, if you do the reading, you'll see another couple of great examples.